Hi everyone, welcome back. This is our day 4 today. All right, since we have already actually gone through all our technical knowledge, okay, briefly. So I hope with that you are already prepared for the exam techniques. All right, today I'll go through with you the exam techniques. All right. And then at the same time as well, okay, once we are done with this particular exam techniques, we will go through the examiner's report for March 2019 exam. Okay, basically, once you get your exam paper, the front page, okay, you have telling you, okay, you're sitting for SBL, things like that. And then basically, when you open that particular page, you will see that there will be a case overview, okay, the background of the case. What does that particular case overview tells you? All right, basically, when you read the background of the case, you actually will know the nature of the business. All right, okay, what type of business that they are in, and then you will also know sometimes they'll tell you the business ownership. All right, whether they are family-owned business or private companies or public listed companies, or whether they are non-profit organizations. So basically, you will know, okay, the business ownership. Basically, is the background of the case. And at the same time as well, okay, when you open up that particular first page of yours, you will have also, okay, the role that you are going to carry out, all right, the task that you are going to carry out and the role that you are holding, right? So basically, you will know who you are in the case, okay, whether you are the consultant or you are the management accountant, you are a CFO or whatever that they mentioned there. So take note of that, because that actually tells on how you are going to pursue with your task after that, all right? And the next thing that you may look for will be your audience, right? So whether your audience, actually the senior management team, the CEO, CFO or COO, okay, board of directors or junior staff. And as you go through, okay, you will know actually your task, okay, whether you are going to be preparing reports, briefing notes, memos, letters, emails, or press statements, and etc. All right. And then you will also know the professional skills that's being tested. Basically, when you run through the requirements, okay, you will know this particular professional skills that are being tested. And you will also have list of exhibits, okay. As you go through that particular list of exhibits, okay, get familiar with it. And because why? Because the list of exhibits, you will have the title of that particular list of exhibits, okay. At least you can gauge what would the actual information be, okay, as the actual one that would be as you read through after that. And then definitely you have requirements of the question. Okay, requirements of the question will be tied up with the task that you're supposed to be preparing. All right. And then it's time for time management. Why? Because you will notice that there will be marks after the end of every question requirements, and that can actually help you with your time allocation. And once you are done with that, then you should actually be preparing yourself to do your answer plan. Okay, so roughly once you have gone through this particular background of the case, okay, you'll be able to have some idea on how you are going to strategize to answer your exam question. All right, so strategy is not just about strategic business leader. So now you are actually strategizing to actually be able to answer the requirement of the questions, and at the same time you are able to complete answering all the questions, okay, within the time given to you. All right, so you need a strategy as well to answer your questions. All right, Why? Because if you don't have any proper strategy, you will not be able to pass. So basically your strategy now, when you go through this particular overview of the question, is trying to plan on how you are going to actually pass this particular exam. All right, so the next part will be the SBL time management. So basically for your exam, all right, why time management is important? Because you have to complete all your tasks successfully within that particular 4 hours. Okay, so the aim now is not just about answering that particular or completing your task within that particular 4 hours, but your strategy is once you actually submitting that particular paper, you must have some confidence in you that what you are submitting is actually the one that the answers that will make you pass your SBL. All right. So you need a strategy. So the first strategy that you have already equipped yourself with the necessary technical knowledge, basically. All right. And then you already know how to identify the topic, the technical knowledge in the questions. So that's part of the strategy. So now it's about timing. Okay. So you need to answer within the stipulated time. So basically your total time is actually given 240 minutes. No more, no less. Four hours exam. All right. So in order for you to be able to do that, okay, answering everything within that particular 240 minutes and with good answers, definitely you require some planning. So maximum time that you should be allocating for your planning is 60 minutes. All right. Because the rest of the time, you should actually use it to answer your question. Okay. So similarly, like, when you did your, for the previous paper of P3, there were students got to answer within 3 hours, 15 minutes. The planning time is only 15 minutes. And 3 hours is basically a solid hour for them to actually answer the requirement of the question. So, but for this particular SBL, okay, your planning, you have 4 hours. Okay. So you are given like at least maximum, you are given maximum of 1 hour to actually do your planning. Okay. So, but instead of utilizing the whole of that particular 60 minutes, start with 40 minutes first. All right. Try your best to actually complete your planning within that particular 40 minutes. Okay. Comparing to P3 previously, all right, that particular 100 marks that they get is purely content, all right. But for SBL, all right, you'll be tested on 2 aspects. One will be the technical content, that is 80 marks, and then the remaining 20 marks comprise of your professional marks, all right. So in total, okay, you will have 100 marks. Okay, if you take like 40 minutes planning time, basically you are left with 200 minutes, all right? And then out of that particular 200 minutes, basically you will have like 2.5 minutes per mark for your per point that you are writing. Okay, basically, okay, let me just like point out to you, okay, basically why, okay, time you need to do your time, planning time, okay? During that particular planning time, all right, not just that you're putting your points, okay, what you found in the exhibits, you just put there, okay, that will be actually part of your answer. But at the same time, while you are doing your planning, okay, try to start thinking about the connection or the link between your points, okay, critically. All right, how are they connected? Basically, your time, your planning, okay, your answer plan is actually the storyboard, right? So what should you be putting in? Okay, what goes first, what goes next? So basically, that's what it is. And then after that, okay, you may also think of a little bit of a storyline. How are you going to put these two things together? Things like that. So it's good if you are able to think on that particular connection between your points, okay, during that particular planning time. Reason being, okay, when you start writing, okay, you already know your flow of your sentences. At least you have a clear flow of thoughts, all right? So basically that is actually part of the general professional marks, basically that will earn marks as well, all right? So during this particular planning time, it's so crucial that you really put your thoughts together, and integration, okay, integrated thinking is very, very crucial here. Okay, so once that you have already read the case study and you understand the organization and the context, okay, you will actually read through down of further down of your introduction that you will have review of the list of exhibits. Okay, the purpose of this particular exhibits is actually for you to get extra information and understand about what kind of information that's actually available for you to read. Okay, at least at this stage you are able to gauge just by reading that particular explanation of what kind of exhibits that actually being provided. So once you have understood that, okay, basically you will actually try to move on to reading of the exhibits. Okay, basically identify the links like I mentioned, annotate, highlight key points, add notes to your answer. And not just the exhibits, after that particular exhibits, okay, you will actually have your requirement of the questions, okay, go through the requirement of your questions, okay. So what do we do when we actually go through our requirement of the question? Basically, okay, what we had earlier, I hope you can still remember what we actually did, okay. Highlighting all, linking all the tasks, okay, highlighting whatever that's necessary there, okay, like what, your role, your format, and the audience that you have, all right. So basically that's what you do. And then what else that you actually will be looking for? You will have like verbs. Verbs is very crucial, all right. So like I mentioned to you earlier, this is actually an instruction, okay. You need to know how to operationalize this because this is an instruction and the action that you have to take. So when I say it's an action that you have to take, that means it guides you on how you are supposed to be writing your answer, okay. And the next thing will be your mark allocation. Why is it crucial? Because that will be telling you then, okay, not just the time that is allowed for you to answer that particular question, but it also guides you on the number of points you need to make to answer that particular question. Okay, what I'm trying to say here is that, okay, since the marks, I think I did highlight, okay, as we went through some of the questions, that when you look at your marks, let's say if the marks is 15, so find out 15 marks, okay, how many minutes that you're supposed to be answering that particular question, okay. Okay, once you know the time, make sure when you answer that question, you have to answer within that particular 15. If it's 15 minutes, then it's 15 minutes. If it's only 10 minutes, then you should be answering within 10 minutes. All right, there are certain questions requirements where you need to actually answer within just 5 to 6 minutes. So please adhere to that particular time, because once you get carried away writing, exceeding that time, you are eating up the time for other tasks or other requirements. Okay, that's the danger. Why? Because if you start eating up the time for other requirements and other tasks, you will be ending up, okay, having limited time or no time to actually answer the final questions. Okay, be careful with that. Let's say if the time is up, stop, move on to the next requirement. Okay, and at the same time as well, it guides you on the number of points that you need to make. All right, so it's either like maybe if you have 15 marks, okay, maybe the number of points that you have to write is more, and if it's only 5 marks, then the number of points that you need to actually make is actually lesser. Okay, and then at the same time as well, okay, it guides you as well, okay, on the other than the time, okay, it tells you on how, all right, you are going to actually manage answering your points within that particular time given to you. For example, okay, if you already know that you're supposed to be answering that particular questions in 10 minutes, and then if let's say you have like 4 points, so make sure each point, okay, will be answered within 2.5 minutes. All right, so don't get carried away. Once you are done with that particular points, you have answered it within 2.5 minutes, then move on to the next point, another 2.5 minutes and another point, okay, so that you'll be able to answer within the time. My suggestion to the students is that, okay, sometimes, okay, it's quite difficult for you to aim for the full marks, definitely, okay, with a time constraint, okay, and then the knowledge that you have, the limited, perhaps you have already gone through your technical knowledge, but sometimes under the pressure of the exam, okay, at the exam condition, okay, so you will not be able to actually think of points, more points to write. So what I suggest is that if let's say the full marks is 15, aim your points that you should be writing, you should be aiming for only 2/3 of that particular marks. Okay, so if you're aiming 2/3 and you have good points, 2/3 of the marks, at least you can still pass. All right. And the last one that you should be focusing on will be the professional skill. Okay, there's a link between this particular professional skill and verbs. Once you perform this particular action that you are required to actually do, indirectly, okay, you are portraying this particular professional skills. But the more professional that you write, the more that you are reflecting your professional skills. Basically, when I say the more professional that you are writing, it means that when you write, it has to come with a clear flow of thoughts on the sequences of your sentences. What should you write first? What should you write next? All right. So basically, okay, that particular flow of thoughts will enable you to get that particular professional skills, provided, all right, you perform that particular actions given by the question verbs. Okay, if you perform it well, you'll be able to actually get that particular professional skills. There are some times that you have like, you know, special professional skill like skepticism, okay, where you need to know, okay, on how you are going to actually write to reflect that particular skepticism skill. For other question verbs, it's kind of easy for you to actually just write, and indirectly the way that you write reflects that particular professional skills. So for skepticism, it requires you, okay, to write, and your sentences should actually reflect that skepticism skills is embedded inside your sentences. All right. For example, any model or framework can help you to identify your points. But like I mentioned, sometimes, okay, model doesn't help. Okay, once we go through that particular March exam report, I think you will understand what I meant by sometimes model just doesn't work in certain circumstances. Okay, the next part will be the task. That means the format. You may be required to construct a report. Okay, you are required to produce this a report. It may be a complete report, or it can be a part of the reports. That means a draft section of the reports. All right. I think when we went through the specimen number 1, you'll find that some of the tasks are asking you to actually prepare a draft section of a report. Okay, when they ask you to prepare a draft section of a report, it means that you don't have to prepare a complete report like what you have here. Okay, this is actually, excuse me. This is a complete report where you have like the title, who's preparing it, okay, who's the recipients and the date, and then basically you have introduction, okay, which comprise of summarizing scope, terms of, okay, whatever terms of reference, the information that you are going to use. So basically this is actually what you may have inside your introduction. Then you may start to have your headings for your findings. That means, okay, the points that you want to make, and these particular points should be in headings. If you may have subheadings, you may use subheadings if it requires you to have that. Okay, so basically having a clear headings, and we have your paragraphs that you want to write, and if you require some subheadings, shows that, okay, you have a clear flow of thoughts on what you want to write inside that particular report. Okay, remember your points that you must have inside the report should be specific and factual. That means specific to the issue that's being addressed, issues to be addressed, okay, depending on your requirement. And then you must have your evidence of saying so, which you may get it from the exhibits. At the end, you may have recommendations or conclusions. Okay. Okay. Some of the questions that the participants ask is that, in the role, I will have more roles. In one case, on writing to the board of directors on behalf of the department director, what would be my role? Okay, read the question carefully. The questions will be clear on what your role will be. Okay, so don't be afraid of that, because definitely you will know your role. Okay, roles are spelled out quite clear. So the next part that you have, okay, remember that here, okay, written in first person, I, we, or our. All right. So next will be memorandum. Okay, before I forget, when you want to do your report, basically just to highlight that you are preparing a report, please do have this title of the report as your heading. Okay, so just to highlight to the examiner that you are preparing a report, and then you're showing that that's your format. Okay, a strategy. All right, this is a strategy. Same goes to memorandum. Okay, you know that your task is actually to prepare memo. Okay, as a heading, just write there memorandum or memo. All right, you can have only memo up there, underline it. All right, as your heading. And then after that, at the top, you also may have to from date and subject, and basically refer to the recipient as you. Okay, so you should be emphasize points by paragraph headers. So heading is always crucial in your answer. Okay, so that you will be able to highlight your points, okay, clearly. And then if you have different points, it should be explained in another different paragraph. It's good to have like 1 point, 1 paragraph. Okay, don't mix your points together under one paragraph, unless, all right, your points are connected to one another and it's a consequence of another event. Then you may actually put these two together, okay, which is actually called as weaving, okay, or integrating. So once you are able to do that, all right, you will get more marks. So since this is a memo, so you finish with your conclusion or recommendation, all right? And if you have to look at this, the next one here that you have, you may be asked to write a letter or an email, basically, all right? So this is the thing that you should actually have at the top. That is the address of the sender, date that is written, and the correct recipient's name and address. Okay, so if this is a letter, so this is how you should have what you should have: introduction paragraph. Maybe you need like to explain the reasons why the letter is written. Okay, your point should be clear and have got some logical flow, and then you should actually write the content and the tone appropriate to the audience. Okay, try your best in a letter. You should actually be using simple words. Okay, don't use jargons which another person may not be able to understand what it is. And for the letters, well, it's written in the first and the second person, like using I, we, our, you, or your. All right, and then you may have a concluding paragraph. Okay, re-emphasizing on the purpose of the letter, drawing the thread of the content together. That means what the points that you are trying to highlight. If appropriate, okay, inviting these particular further actions by the recipients. For example, if they would like to get in touch with you, how can they contact you? Okay, so you may want to have that in a letter as well. But basically, you have experience doing it, okay, writing an email. So if let's say you are asked to actually write an email, your experience in writing an email, okay, can actually be used for you to answer that particular question. But make sure you have that particular heading email if it's an email, right? Another one will be speech or statement at a meeting. Sometimes you may be asked to actually prepare a speech. or statement at a meeting. Okay. Sometimes you are preparing your own speech. Sometimes you are asked to prepare a speech on behalf of someone. Okay, be careful. Okay, please be careful on that. All right. For example, all right, your CFO, you are a junior staff, so basically you are just at the managerial level, but your CFO actually supposed to have like a meeting or is going to address certain audiences and wanting you to prepare a speech for him, right? So even if you are a junior staff, when you are preparing the speech for him, all right, it means for the CFO, that means the tone of your writing should be like as if that you are the CFO and you are the one who is actually writing that particular speech. Okay. What should you have inside the speech? Speech should be easy to read out, all right? Definitely you'll begin with formal introduction. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, okay? Something that you are actually familiar with. Provide an overview of what will be covered. Connect each section with narrative design to make it sound convincing, logical, and persuasive, all right? Then definitely no bullet points. Okay, you end your speech or statement at the meeting with like, thank you for listening. Okay, now I open the floor to questions or something like this, or you can have your own, you know, and response as you wish, as long as it is like, inviting the floor to actually ask question, as long as you don't invite them to sing with you. All right. Okay. So what next? This is actually a briefing note. Okay. If you're preparing a briefing notes, what should actually you have is on top of it? Perhaps you can actually have this. All right. Usually you'll have to, from, okay, and the title. Basically, that one is actually formal. Okay. A full report. So perhaps if it's a briefing note, you can have for that. For the attention of when you have your audience. All right, for your audience. Okay, whoever the person who asks you to actually prepare that particular briefing notes. And usually briefing notes actually required for the use at board meeting or to inform external stakeholders. Okay, you will always start with the key points. Okay, after that, later on the background information written in third person. All right, if you are talking about third person, okay, you are talking about the directors or the board of directors, the company, name the company. All right, points should be succinct. I mean, not too long, not complicated, straight to the point, short paragraphs, and highlighting key points with headers. All right. However, the notes should be written in a correct grammar, if possible. Try your best to do that. All right. Another one that you may likely be asked to actually perform as your task we'll be preparing press statement or a website statement. Basically, okay, the content is more or less the same. You should be emphasizing on the key issues, and then the background information, okay, later in the statement or in the appendices. And then you should have a clear explanation of the situation the company wants to actually clarify, or the case that the board wish to make. It's always the third person narrator. That means instead of just putting the company, say that you can actually mention A Limited or B Limited, okay, the name of the company. So basically, what you should be writing here in your press or website statement, okay, will depend on what you have inside the requirement of the question. Make sure the emphasis on the key points is answering the requirement of the question, because the requirement can actually ask you on corporate citizenship, things like that. So you should actually be tying up that corporate citizenship with the issues, and it should actually, the issues should be explained further inside this particular press or website statement. Another point is the management narratives in annual report. So what basically is the actually management narratives in annual reports? So in your annual reports, you may find that there's actually like a chairman statement, something like that, okay, that you actually talk about, you know, explain how the company has performed and what would be the future strategy that I have, things like that. So basically, that's what you may have inside the management narratives in annual report. Try and have a look at an actual annual report. See what actually is actually written there and how it's being written. Okay, that would actually help you. And if possible, all right, for all the tasks that we have already gone through just now with all those particular formats, try to actually have a look at an actual report. Okay, you can actually Google the actual report, okay, and find out how it should actually be prepared. That would actually give you some insight on how you should be preparing it for the exam. The next part, okay, will be the question verb. What is question verbs? Remember, question verb is actually an instruction for you. So before you know what you are supposed to be, what you need to understand this particular instruction. All right. So to understand the instruction, you need to understand what that particular question verb means. Okay, it's actually your action that you're supposed to be performing. And that particular action question verbs also tells you what to do and how to answer the question. So it's a guide. Okay, question verb is actually a guide for you. Okay, on what information to look for and how you're going to put and connect your points together, which is normally called as weaving or integrating, and how answers should actually be written. Okay, so if it's a discuss or if it's actually evaluate, so basically it's a different way of putting your answers together. It is not the same. You discuss is not the same as evaluate. So basically you know what you are supposed to be doing. All right, so your answers, okay, the way that your answer is actually being structured, it wouldn't be the same, okay, when you actually discuss and when you actually evaluate. Like I mentioned to you earlier, all right, if you perform your action, okay, perform that particular action well, indirectly, okay, you are reflecting that particular professional skills that's actually being tested. All right, the way that you write, the way that you put your thoughts together, the sequence of your sentences and the storyline, the words that you put in, things like that plays a big role, okay, in answering the examination question. Okay, if you notice that there's an intellectual level of 2 and 3 that is actually being put here, okay, by excuse me, by ACCA. So what is that actually? That one actually reflects the level of high order thinking skill. Where you should have the ability to be critical and analytical in looking at issues, all right? Not just looking at issues, but also find solutions and suggesting solutions. So when we talk about suggesting the solution, it cannot just simply any solutions, okay? The solution must, and basically at the end of the day, it has to make sense. It has to be an appropriate one to actually address that particular issue. All right. So this is basically the level. So when it comes to analyze, if you notice analyze, okay, it's actually carrying the level of 2 and 3 of the higher order thinking skills. You're supposed to be breaking it into separate parts and discuss. Examine and interpret each part. Okay, the key tips here is that give reasons for the current situation or what has happened. So basically that's what an analyze means. Okay. And the next part would be recommend. And when it comes to recommending, okay, if you notice that, okay, it's an intellectual level of 3. So basically, the higher order thinking skill is at the highest level. So whatever that you are recommending, okay, it should be something that is appropriate for that particular company, company or organization, something that suits them, all right, and recommendations that is actually making sense as well. All right, so basically that's what this particular higher order thinking skill, and it actually lies under the action verb of recommend. So you are supposed to be giving advice, or you're supposed to counsel. So comparing to analyze, analyze is you give reasons for the current situation or what has happened. That means if something was like that before, okay, why you think the internal control was not good? So you need to actually find the reasons. Perhaps the CSO is not performing his fiduciary duty. That, okay, result in the tone from the top is not actually giving a very good impression on the culture of the organization. So that's the reason why you find that the internal control is actually weak. All right. So that means you're trying to give reasons on that particular situation. Okay. The situation that they're talking here will be the issue. So you need to actually give the reason, okay, for that particular issue, why that issue actually happened or that particular issue emerged. And recommend basically, okay, asking you to give advice or counsel. So what does that mean? How would it be when how you're supposed to be writing when you're supposed to be recommending? Basically, when you recommend, all right. So here it says like give advice or counsel. So if you're giving advice to a person, okay, as a layman understanding of an advice. So if let's say you're giving them an advice, definitely you will actually highlight to them, okay, what good about that particular action and what's not good about it. All right. Basically, you will actually have to put forward, okay, both the good and the bad things. So if you have to take these particular options, okay, it will actually lead you to this. But however, you have to be very careful because if you do not actually execute it well, this thing can happen. So this is what an advice is, okay? Another question verb, which is actually at level 3 as well, all right? This is why you need to be critical and analytical, all right? So to be critical and analytical, as and when you read any articles, okay, you have to think. It's not just reading it blindly. When I say you need to think, you try to relate to the technical knowledge that you have learned, okay, and understand why, okay, that particular practices is being performed that way. Okay, so try to relate it with the technical knowledge that you have already acquired. So don't read articles blindly. Same goes to when you listen to podcasts, okay, and at the same time when you watch videos, okay, on leadership or on whatever business videos, okay, try to think it critically by relating it to the technical knowledge that you have already learned. So here, evaluate. Asking you to determine the scenario in the light of arguments for and against. Basically, you have to measure the evidence, the case point, okay, or issue to support your evaluation. That means, okay, why you are saying that it's good and why you are saying that it's not good. So you must have some evidence so that you'll be able to actually justify on the arguments of your for and against. Sorry, forgot another one. Okay. Explain. Explain is basically, okay, a slightly lower level of the higher order thinking skill. That is level number 1 and level number 2. So if you have any requirements having a question verb of explain, you should actually take the advantage of answering that particular question clearly, because why? Okay, usually it will be easy for you to get that particular full mark if you are able to make the idea clear and you are able to actually show some logical how this particular concept is actually being developed logically. All right, that means your flow of thoughts. That means if you explain why this thing happened and result with which one, so that's the reason why this thing is actually happening. So you're trying to explain that particular idea. So you give reason for an event. So basically that's what explain is. Okay, it's not just about listing your points and it's not just about the bullet points that you put there. Okay, remember you need to actually provide those particular lists together with some explanations there. So this is what explain is all about. Another one, Another question verb is actually describe. Describe and explain is a way for you to actually it's an intellectual level of 1 and 2 is 1 and 2 where you have the slightly lower higher order thinking skill, all right? And I would say that if you are asked to describe, it would actually be easy for you to actually answer the question. So why do I say it's easier? Because we are just making what? Here it says that make picture with words. That means describing. Okay. It's like, you know, when you describe someone is pretty, you'll start describing the eyes, the the nose, okay, the features, okay, the skin color or the hair, things like that. Okay, so you are describing it. Okay. The intellectual level that is higher than the described is actually discussed, which is similar to your evaluation and analyze just now. All right. So when you are asked to actually discuss, you should actually consider and debate or argue about the pros and cons of the issue. Okay, you are supposed to be determining it in detail by using arguments for and against. And key tips is about what? What's the conflict all about? Write about, okay, what the conflict is all about. And you may want to make some comparison and contrasting certain points that you have, okay, in order for you to actually come up with a discussion. So the next part is that, okay, this is actually the question as analysis where I've already like put in the verbs for each and every of these particular specimens and your past exams of September and December exam. So if you notice that, okay, from all these particular specimens, okay, have a look at this particular question number 1. Okay, there are an element of both higher order thinking skill of 1, 2, and 3 here. Only in this particular question number 1, you have so many, right? So not just that you have analysis, which is 3, you also have explained that carries the intellectual level of 1 and 2. You also have others like highlighting, okay, identifying and construct. And for this particular specimen number 2, you have both as well in question number 1, okay, the whole sum of higher order thinking skill from level number 1 to level number 3. What more to say, in specimen number 3, okay, you also have 1 up to 3, okay. So basically, most of these are, wow, 2 and 3, I would say. We're talking about compare and contrast, is like intellectual level number 2. And assess is actually, okay, level number 3, basically when you appraise, right, is 3. So there's a lot of higher order thinking skills in the questions you're going to have at SBL. And that makes it, okay, eligible to be called as a professional examination. And September 2018, also under this discuss, then you have December, discuss and evaluate. So basically, when you go through this, okay, you'll be able to understand, or not just understand the requirements, okay, you'll be able to understand the demand of the questions and the expectations of the examiner. All right. So that's the reason why when you look at this particular question verb, it means that, okay, the examiner requires you to have a very high order thinking skills. So that's the expectation of this particular examiner out of you. So in order for you to fulfill the expectations, right, okay, you need to do your preparation. making sure that you are able to elevate, okay, the way that you look at things and the way that you analyze things should be at the level that is expected by that particular examiner. So it requires you to do a lot of preparation. It's not an easy work, right? You can't just simply, okay, there's no easy way out, I would say. You need to do hard work, all right? Not just hard work, but smart as well. Okay, that's why you need a lot of discussion, especially SBL. It requires you to do a lot of discussion. So that's the reason why I have that particular WhatsApp group. Because sometimes I'll just post a simple thing for you to think of. All right. So if you feel that you want to, okay, have this particular discussion going on, just post something. Say maybe we can all look at it and give our viewpoints on that. So basically, why you need the discussion? Because it helps you to see, okay, what is required out of that particular paper from a different perspective. Okay, sometimes people can think along a certain way, okay, from different angle. Some look at another different angle, but they are all correct. And that's why you see that, okay, the answers that you have inside that particular suggested solutions is not the only answer. Okay, the one that you have in your suggested solution to tell you that is a perfect answer. That's not an answer that is actually being given under the exam condition, right? So why they have that particular suggested solution is actually to help, okay, those who actually doesn't go for a tuition, okay, you don't go for tuition, you don't go to a tuition center, but you self-study. Basically, that suggested solution should be able to actually help you, okay, to see how a question should be answered and what are the possible points that can actually be written, okay, to actually fulfill that particular requirement of that question. Okay, so the thing is that if you actually self-study, it's just that you don't have a person to actually have a look at what you have written, whether what you have written is actually a correct thing as well. Because sometimes what you write, your answer may not be the same as the one that is in the suggested solution, but doesn't mean your answer is actually wrong. Okay, I don't want you to get disheartened. Okay, once you actually prepared it, you practice, and then when you check with the answer in the suggested solution, all right, then your answer is totally not the same. Okay, don't be disheartened. Why? Because your answer may not be wrong. It's just that, okay, you are looking from a different perspective, and that particular perspective is also correct. So that's the reason why it's good. If you are able to actually find someone to have a look at the answer, sometimes, okay, you are writing the same thing as the one that is actually inside that particular suggested solution. It's just that because of the language barrier, all right, it ends up that your write-up is not the same as what you have at the back. So, but your points is actually more or less the same like what you have at in the suggested solution. Okay, so you don't have to worry about that. Be confident. So this is also the same, right? So I'm not going to dwell on this. I've already actually shown you what is it, okay? Why actually I've already like examined this, because I want to see the expectation. The expectation is quite high, okay? It's kind of demanding. Okay, why? Because you really need to actually elevate the way that you think up to the level of intellectual 3, the highest order thinking skill. And the next part that you're going to have will actually be this particular professional skill. Okay, let me just take a break and look at the question first. Audio loss? What do you mean by audio loss? Can you still hear me? I'm still here. All right. I hope it's clear. How to practice professional skill for SBL exam is practice writing. Look at the question verb. Look at the professional skills. All right. If you understand your question verb well, you'll be able to actually get your professional skill marks. All right. So you need to understand that question verb. Question verb is very crucial. Okay. All right. Don't be intimidated by this particular, okay, when you look at SBL question, okay, don't let yourself be intimidated by the requirement of the question. Try to actually attempt the question slowly, all right, and understand it. Okay, since this is the first, let's say this is the first time that you're looking at specimens and trying to actually practice, okay, my suggestion is that, okay, you start looking at the requirements slowly, okay, and I wouldn't want you to actually straight away answer it under the exam condition. If, let's say, you are comfortable with the questions and the requirement of the questions, then you can actually train yourself to answer under the exam condition. But first thing here is that, all right, by all means, once you start actually reading your introduction, perhaps you can start your studying by looking into that particular introduction, all right? If, let's say, from one particular paragraph to another that you don't understand certain things, okay, sometimes they have business model or they have, like, you know, talking about ownership. So perhaps you may want to have a look at your technical knowledge, what is actually suitable for you to understand that particular paragraph. Okay, so start slowly, and then but make sure not too slow. All right, maybe, like, you know, one specimen a day, or maybe one specimen for 2 days, basically, because why? As you read through, you can't answer it because you feel that some technical knowledge still lacking. So you stop, read on that particular technical knowledge, then you go back again and try to answer the question. Okay, you go back and forth until you are comfortable that you understand the whole of the technical knowledge, the syllabus. Then you should actually be then you are supposed to be actually answering that whole question straight away. But don't do it under the exam condition yet. Make sure that you answer it without looking at that particular technical knowledge anymore. Okay, and once you are able to do that and you have practice, and lastly, then only you actually start answering it within 4 hours, 4 hours, and 4 hours. Okay, so let us go back to this particular professional skills. If you ask me frankly, all right, if you are good in critical thinking and you are good in, like, logical sense, there are times just with understanding a little bit on the concept, okay, under the syllabus of SBL, and by reading a lot of business news, I think you should be able to actually answer, you attempt this particular SBL examination. for some of you, all right, if let's say, I think some of you who self-study that you don't have any textbook, all right, all you have is only like, all those provided by the ACCA, you have specimens, things like that, you have syllabus guides, okay, so you don't have any Kaplan or you don't have any I would say what was a BPP, okay, but what you can do is that, okay, is each and every of those syllabus that you have, okay, from the ACCA website you have the syllabus, right? Okay, so what you can do is that, okay, go through that particular syllabus and look into any of the strategic management books. You can actually borrow it from the library. Okay, as you go through the syllabuses, can you read on it? If it's on leadership, try to read on that particular leadership, all right? And make your notes out of that. And then if, let's say, they're talking about culture, then you start reading about culture and follow through with that particular textbook. Make your own notes, okay, on the technical knowledge. Once you have done that, then you try to attempt the question. Okay, if actually you are able to actually attempt that particular question, that means it's already good enough. Okay, because I know some may not be able to get the SBL books or the kit, things like that, but you still want to pursue with your study, strategic management textbook is actually a good textbook as well, right? So if you can get it from your local library, that will be superb, right? So if even if, let's say, you go through this particular SBL textbook, okay, they mention a lot about this particular name of Johnson, Sholes and Whittington. Johnson, Sholes and Whittington do have a textbook, okay, on exploring the strategy. That is actually a good book. It helps you to actually understand what strategy is, okay. Okay, text. Text and cases, okay. If you notice that even if you read Kaplan or BPP, okay, they refer to this particular person's name a lot, okay. So I think if you're able to get that person's textbook, okay, borrow it from the library or anything under this particular name, it is actually helpful. Okay, let's go into your professional skills. So basically, this is what will be tested. All right. Communication skill, where you have to this is what you have to demonstrate: the ability to inform, persuade, and clarify. Okay. And usually the question verbs that comes together with this, usually, I'm not saying that all the time, but usually will be explain, right? So when you are asked to explain something, so basically you are informing something, okay, it has to be like, persuading or clarifying something. So commercial acumen, okay, requires you to demonstrate awareness, okay, about the business environment usually, okay. Use your judgment and show insights. That's where when you are suggesting something for the company, so it has to be something that makes sense, okay. that is actually appropriate for that particular organization. Okay, why do I say that? Okay, demonstrating a commercial acumen, demonstrating awareness, use of judgment, and show insight means that, okay, when let's you are actually asked to actually evaluate on the performance, and then after that you are asked to suggest something. And if, let's say, you know that that particular organization is not performing well, by all means do not suggest them something that is ridiculous, okay, that they can't afford to do. Okay, this is what it means by demonstrating awareness. Okay, so you need to use your judgment, what would be best for them to do within the means that they have. Okay, try not to think of something that is totally beyond their means. So this is demonstrating awareness, using your judgment to show the insight, which reflects the commercial acumen. And analysis is basically, okay, where you have to actually investigate. Okay, when you want to write something, when you're analyzing and you want to write what you analyzed, basically you will have to actually find evidence, isn't it? Investigating means looking for evidence. The moment that you look at the exhibits and you use the information from the exhibits, say basically you are demonstrating the activity of investigation. Okay, when you start saying that the ratio is like this, that it's an evidence of an investigation. Then you start to actually inquire, okay, if it's like this, what will happen? So you are trying to consider, after that you will try to consider, okay, whatever that you have already calculated, okay, and you know what would the implication is, then you may want to consider whether, okay, whether they are good or whether they are not good, or things like that. All right, okay, or you may want to consider it for, like, you know, okay, perhaps, okay, because of this they should be doing something, so you are suggesting something. All right, so this is what an analysis is. Skepticism is probing, question, and challenge. Like I mentioned to you, don't take whatever that's being given to you at face value. When you read the question is actually asking you about the internal control system, okay, of that organization. Yes, sometimes having internal control system is good, but you need to actually scrutinize how good or how effective it is. So you may want to question on that and challenge on that. If it's really good, then this thing wouldn't have happened. So this is actually what skepticism is all about. Evaluation will be assess, estimate, and appraise. I'll go through into detail after this. Next part. Okay, this particular part will be on commercial acumen. Under this particular commercial acumen, all right, like I mentioned to you, you need to show awareness of the wider business and external factors affecting the business, and use commercially sound judgment and insight to resolve issues and exploit opportunities. So basically this is what commercial acumen is, okay, and how you are able to do that. Okay, you are able to consider changes in revenue, why it's actually happening that way, okay, and you need to actually know that how important for you to actually reduce costs and try to increase your revenue, okay, and then at the same time the importance of this cost and profit for decision making. So this is basically how you are demonstrating your commercial acumen. So basically, as an accounting student, you actually are used to actually look at the financial statements, basically you know what that particular background of business is, right? So you normally make decisions. So what is it that you use? So you look for your data, all right? Your financial data. So having a look at your financial data to make your decision, okay? And then at the same time finding solutions that make sense. That actually showing that you are performing that or demonstrating that commercial acumen. So what I wrote here, you see, so if you are in a bad financial position and then suddenly you are asking them to actually do something that requires them to use money. So it's not logical, all right? So it's just like, okay, your friend only have like $5 and then you expect them to actually buy something that costs $10. So it just doesn't make sense. Unless you want to pay on his behalf, then that's different. Okay, perhaps if you have other alternatives where you find that there are investors who want to actually invest, then that's different. It makes sense. You don't have money, but you want to expand, but there's someone else who actually wants to invest. So that makes sense. Because I don't have the money, I can't afford to buy that food that costs $5. That costs $10. I only have $5. But if let's say someone wants to spend and buy the food for me, then why not? Okay, so it's the same thing. Just remember, you apply SBL in your daily life every day, and you are actually performing whatever that you are actually doing for your SBL every day. Trust me, every day is SBL. Why do I say that every day is SBL? You are always like, coming up with options. You are always like coming up with decisions. So basically, that's part of SBL. It's just that we don't realize it. We don't call it as SBL. You strategize. Some of you who works at the end of the day, okay, once you got your salary, then you may be thinking of what you want to do with your money. So you are actually strategizing, right? You might do some savings. So what's the purpose? That's a strategy. What's the purpose of saving? That means for the future. So that in case that you may need extra money, at least you have some saving. So whatever that you do is actually SBL. All right. We'll try to relate it with your activities. Put yourself in that particular person's shoes. If you are in that company and you're facing that problem, what would you do? Okay, think about it logically. Any questions so far? Wow, you all are so good. I hope you understand very well outside there, right? I hope it's clear. So the next part is actually analysis. What analysis is actually, okay, what analysis skills require is for you to thoroughly investigate and research for information from variety of sources. So when I say variety of sources, if you were to look at the exhibit, sometimes you find that an exhibit only have financial statements. They don't have anything else. The rest, in that particular exhibits, they only have financial statements. Once you have done your analysis, you need to actually look for the answers on the reason why your data that you have already processed just now, the info, and you may want to know the reason of why it's happening that way by relating it to information that you have from other exhibits. Perhaps the reason for the ratio to go up, the percentage to go up or the percentage to go down, might be caused by certain issues that you find in other exhibits. So try to put it together. That's what an investigation is. That's what an analysis is. You're putting pieces together, right? So what do you do when people do investigation? They're trying to find evidence, isn't it? So when they find evidence, they're trying to put the evidence together, because at the end, all right, okay, they want to actually solve a problem. Similarly, that's what you're trying to do. Okay, but here, the kind of investigation that you are doing is finding the evidence from the financial statements or any information that you have. It may not be just the financial statement. It can also be from your non-financial data. Okay, always remember, when you are asked to analyze, not necessarily all the time that you are analyzing only the figures. Sometimes you have to analyze the non-financial data. Sometimes you have to analyze what? Words. Interviews is all what? Words. There's no figures there. Sometimes it's remarks that people give. Okay? So whatever it is, all right? So this is actually what you're supposed to be doing. So you're supposed to be investigating, and you're supposed to be looking for every evidence. Why? Because at the end, you're supposed to be considering it for recommending an appropriate action. That's why you have the word here. Consider recommending action. How are you going to do that? You're supposed to produce relevant analysis from the information that provided in the case study, like I mentioned to you just now. Okay, whatever evidence that you have in the case study, it's all depending on the requirement of the question. All right, so once you are able to actually find out which particular exhibits that's relevant, sometimes, okay, one particular requirement may not only be using one exhibit. Please bear in mind that not necessarily that you are using only one exhibits. After this, when we go through that exam report for March 2019, okay, you see that how some students actually perform, how some are not actually performing, and the reason why they perform and why some did not perform. Okay, the mistake that they do, for those who did not perform, you wouldn't want to repeat it in the exam. Okay, by all means, try not to actually do that. And then the one who did well, what is it that actually have done for them to actually perform well? So those are the tips that you would want to have, all right, to help you for your June exam. So we are done with this. Okay, some are asking, are we obliged to actually recommend while analyzing? Okay, it depends on your requirement of the question. All right, read the question carefully. So basically what we have here is that, okay, when you look at what we have analysis just now, this is analysis skills, right? So what you need to do is produce relevant analysis from information provided in the case, overview, and exhibits, right? You're supposed to be creating new evidence, not the one that is given there. The one that's given there is already historical evidence, for example. Okay, hold on. My apology. All right. So Once actually you have already created those particular evidence, okay, in response to the requirement, you see, okay, as a basis for your action that you are recommending an organization to take. So basically, when you have the evidence, okay, you need to consider those evidence for you to actually that evidence is actually acting as a basis, okay, for why you are actually recommending the organization to actually take that particular options, for instance, right? So this is not last, I have not gone to the skepticism yet, all right? So communication skills. When it comes to communication skills, right, you're supposed to be expressing yourself clearly and convincingly. That means people believe in what you are saying, okay? Not just clear, okay? They listen to you to an appropriate medium while being sensitive to the needs of the intended audience, all right? So basically you need this particular medium, okay? Medium can be anything. It may not just be a PowerPoint presentation, a format. It can be any type of write-up that requires you to actually inform someone, to persuade and try to clarify things. Okay, so how you're going to do it, that you should be able to express your thoughts clearly in an appropriate writing style and format. That means a person who reads your answer will not question further. After you have made that particular explanation or statement or sentence, suddenly people question you. So what? Why? So if you yourself start questioning your own sentence that way, right? Okay, so every time that you start writing and you start questioning yourself, so why do I write this? Is it clear? So if it's not clear, that means you should actually, that means your answer is not enough. All right? So you need to actually have another reasoning for that so that people wouldn't question you further. For example, if you're saying that, okay, the ratio goes up, okay, for example, the expenses actually goes down and profit goes up, and it shows that basically, okay, the company is actually performing well. Would it be enough? What do you mean by performing well? All right, so you need a further evidence for you to say that it's actually performing well. That means it has to be clear. This is the professional skills that I think, okay, most students are lacking at, is actually the skepticism skills. So my students, if it's actually other type of professional skills, they will be able to do it. But when it comes to skepticism, that's where disaster comes in. Most students are not able to actually get much marks when skepticism skills is actually being evaluated. Okay, what is this particular skill all about? It's about probing, question and challenge information and views that's specially given to you. Okay, to fully understand the business issues and establish facts objectively, okay, based on ethical and professional values. So basically, this is what skepticism is. Okay, you need to do probing, questioning, and challenging in the way that you write. So, because why? You are not supposed to be actually taking the information off. And if someone says like, you know, this is our procedures, and then this produces an efficient procedures. So you cannot just, you know, accept what people tell you. So what you would want to do is you try to scrutinize that particular information and try to look further on whether is it really effective. So these are the things that requires you to actually look at it further, start, you know, probing into it. Okay, let me see. Okay, for example, if this is good, so perhaps if they say that, okay, we have good internal control system. If someone were to tell you, if they have a good internal control system, and why do you think that the issues that they're having crop up? So you need to tie these two things together. And this way you start questioning, all right? You start to probe further. If let's say this one is actually taking place, and why you are saying that this is actually good. Or if you say that this one is good and this one reflects that it's not good. So you are trying to connect these two together. You're probing into it, and then you start questioning. And after that, you'll be challenging those particular information. So basically, like what's being mentioned here, you are the you should be aware of the quality, scope, source, and age of information provided. Okay, sometimes they give you, yes, we have this particular information, but that particular information was dated like maybe 2-3 years back. Do you think it's still relevant? So these are the kind of things that you have to look at. Purpose for which the information was produced and by whom. Okay, why do I say this? If you still remember, all right, if you still remember what we did on the specimen number 1, that whereby your role is the management accountant, you are professionally qualified, and then you have a friend, okay, who is actually partially qualified, and this particular guy who is actually partially qualified, preparing certain documents, okay, for you, and you need that particular information to make decision. You cannot just simply take whatever that he has prepared, okay, as correct. Why? Looking at his background, he is not partially qualified. There are bound to be some things that he has not taken into consideration. Whereas you, okay, who is actually a qualified accountant, you already know what is needed, okay, for that particular report, or that particular, you know, information should have what kind of information. So if let's say that guy has prepared and give that to you, you need to actually revise it, not revise, review it, okay, just in case, like, you know, there's something that you expect to be there, it's not there. So you may actually want to question why it's not being put there. Okay, so basically, you are not taking something on the surface. Okay, so this is what skepticism is all about. So if I can't remember which particular question, but there's one particular question that talks about the internal control and the fiduciary duty of that particular director. Okay, the internal control system failed because that particular director fails to perform his fiduciary duties. So that's where, all right, you have to actually connect these two things together. Why that the CEO, okay, has got an impact. Okay, whatever that he's doing, he fails his duty. Why does that the failing of his duty has got an impact on the internal control? So this is something that you have to question. If you still remember on the internal control under COSO, right? The first element that you must have on the internal control is what? Control environment. The support of board of directors. Okay, the top management should set the tone of the should set the tone from the top. So that actually explains why that if there's no support from the top management and if they fail, definitely the whole thing will fail or may fail. All right. And another one here. That we have is actually evaluation. You're supposed to be assessing the situation, proposals, and arguments in a balanced way and using professional and ethical judgment to predict future outcomes and consequences as a basis for a sound decision making. All right. So basically, you have to actually demonstrate your ability to do the assessment, estimating, and appraise. That means judging the worth of what you have actually, okay, assess or estimates. So how to actually demonstrate this is by ensuring that possible courses of action are examined from different perspectives and where relevant, clearly stating reasonable assumptions and including points for and against. So conclusions and recommendations made should be consistent with the most persuasive factors presented which provide logical argument for the course of action suggested. All right. So basically, okay, you must actually do the assessment and estimates, then you'll be able to actually judge the worth of what you have already been doing so that you'll be able to actually provide that particular recommendation or suggestions. All right. As we go through the examples, okay, the questions later, okay, I will show you how it is actually connected, okay, how question verb is actually connected to professional skills and how you are going to actually demonstrate that you are, when you write, you are reflecting that particular professional skills. Okay, so what's the connection between these two? Actions that you perform reflects whether you are demonstrating the professional skill. This is why you have to actually know the question verbs. Indirectly, the question verbs directs you towards, fulfilling the demand of your professional skills. And I would say the most difficult that students face is to demonstrate the skepticism skills just now. All right. I find that students have less problem in demonstrating the other skills. Okay, other skills are actually quite easy for you to actually demonstrate. All right. But remember, examiners will not just be looking at this particular skills as well. It's actually looking at general professional skills. Okay, your flow of thoughts, things like that when you actually put your sentence together. Previously, when students did P1 and P3, okay, as long as they are able to answer the questions and justify related to the case, and that's it. But for SBL, it requires you to actually perform your task, and at the same time you're supposed to be demonstrating the professional skills that are demanded by ACCA. Okay. Okay. So we are done with that particular exam techniques, and we have a look at this particular examiner's report, okay, for March 2019. And before that, okay, let me just go through with you just an example, okay, on how you're going to actually use exam techniques for your answer. Okay. I know that in exam you will not have this all colorful things, okay, don't worry. Okay, this is just an example like I mentioned to you, okay. As you read through this particular passage, all right, you'll find that, you see, this is Relco, okay, this tells who they are, okay. This is why I say under the introduction it's important for you to actually identify this, who these people are, all right. Oh, what's happening here? Okay, so there's something missing here, okay. So public sector rail company, basically the ownership is what? This is a public sector, okay. It's basically a government company, all right, okay. So what they are supposed to do is delivering passenger, okay, rail services. So if you know that they are public sector organization, okay, Railco is a public sector organization, okay, and automatically from the technical knowledge that you have, okay, your prior knowledge you have learned on the ownership structure, and then you also have learned on the background of what public companies are. So at least you know the objective of this particular companies. Okay, so why you need to know that? Because it's like it will actually help you to understand further, okay, on the objective and what is demanded out of this particular company. Okay, so this is actually an example on how you should actually be looking at your introduction. Okay, here it tells you, okay, the governing committee, okay, responsible, okay, who are they responsible to, you see, Ministry of Transport. So this is actually the structure, governance structure of this Railco. So they have what? The structure. You have Railco Trust Board, Board of Directors, and they have whom? So they have how many committees here? They have 5 committees. So automatically you know that this is the governance structure. So this is what they have. And you notice that they have audit and risk committee together, because when you read your technical knowledge, they're supposed to be separated, right? Okay. So here you can see that, oh, they are not separated. So you want to see whether later in the exhibits, did they actually mention about this? So this is what you want to actually find out. And this is the background, and then basically, okay, whatever information that you have, you should actually know what to expect or what you can gauge out of what they have mentioned here. All right. For example, okay, you have a look at this. Here it says that Railco has in the recent past received negative publicity. So automatically, if I say for you to do critical thinking, you should actually be thinking about what? If it's negative publicity, it relates to reputation. It relates to branding. It relates to customer loyalty. And basically it's what? Risk and ethics. So that's the reason why it is important for you, as you read through, you have to start to analyze. Okay, so there's exhibits here. So why do I do this? Oh, this is telling me, okay, there's a website, all right, and they're talking about what? The leadership and governance. So at least I can actually gauge something from here. Oh, there are something to do with perhaps maybe effective leadership here. Might never know. All right. So here talking about newspaper published in BLAN, okay, transport report, things like that. So I can gauge if something goes into the newspaper is a news, it must be something that relates to what? Image of companies. But here I wouldn't know what it is all about. I need to actually read further, then I will know, right? So here they tell you about this particular survey, and then when they mention about the survey and they talk about what? Competitors as well. So automatically you know that this particular company has got competitors and you want to know who they are. So from here I can actually gauge, okay, the possible requirement that I might have. And also have board of meeting minutes, and I have outlined this specification. They have the CV there, and then why? Okay, for the new chief executive positions. So what is happening to the existing CEO? So you may want to actually find out as well. So after that, they do have like, you know, ticket sales, the passenger usage data, and they're talking about fraud analysis of stations. So automatically that it tells you something about the possible fraud that may take place or have taken place. I don't know. Okay, because why I've not read the exhibits, but at least it gives me some rough idea what I should actually expect when I read through. So you'll be doing with your pen or your pencil, all right, for you to actually look at this particular question. See, remember, I told you about the role. Okay, who is he? Non-executive member. And at the same time, who are you? You are non-executive member, and you are also a chairman of the Nomination and Corporate Governance Committee. So NED, okay, that means you are a board member. Okay, you are a non-executive member, but you are a board member. Okay, because why? You are chairman of the nomination committee here, and this particular nomination committee is actually a committee under board of directors. Okay, so that's why when you read the requirement, you need to actually start analyzing. All right. What happened is that they have chairman, okay, recently appointed chairman of this particular trust board. I've already asked you and who you are. You are the non-executive member, all right, chairman of nomination committee, asking you to provide him what information relating to the governance of Railco and the roles and responsibilities of the non-executive directors. So basically, when you look at the question, this is what you may need to do. All right, but yours wouldn't be as colorful as this. Mine is colorful because I have time to do this. Okay, yours will be under exam condition. So basically, whatever skills that we went through just now is actually now being put into practice. So this is what it is. All right. So all this that you have known just now, basically you just put it down. Okay, it's inform, persuade, clarify, so that you'll be able to actually write. And as you write your answers by referring to these particular question verbs, can understanding your role just now. Okay, this is the task that you have to prepare. Okay, a briefing paper for whom? The Railco Transport. This is actually your audience. Okay, so your question verbs is this one. You have two question verbs. All right, and then for these two question verbs, for this one, okay, if you were to see here, you have basically got how many elements in your requirements? Identify, explain, and discuss. So 3 actions that you have to do here. All right. So once you know that you have to do this particular 3 actions, when you answer the questions, make sure you fulfill these particular 3 actions. So as you write, what you need to do is you keep on referring to the question requirements to see whether you fulfill what they are asking for. Right? So as you write, then you ask yourself, did I satisfy the identify? Have I actually identified the agency relationship of the parties involved in Railco? And then you are asked to explain, oh, have I explained? So if you look at this particular question requirement, let's say if you have identified a few, then you have to look at whether you have explained or not the parties there. So next you have to discuss. When you discuss, you're supposed to discuss few things. Rights and responsibilities of those parties. All right? How do those parties here are the ones that you have already identified here. So as you write, keep on looking back at this particular requirement so that you will actually know, okay, whether you have fulfilled that particular requirement or not. Break down into 3 parts. Okay, look at it here. Okay, as an example that I put here. Because of this particular task that you're supposed to be doing, all right, remember this question 1, but the way have two parts. Okay, you are asked to do this, which one? A, this is the thing that you have to do. That's why I put here like the body. Okay, for A, I have to do this, right? And then I have like another section that is B, this one, inside my report. And I will have the heading for B here. And then I have to actually fulfill the requirements of this. So I have to perform the action of assessing, okay, the role and value of this particular non-executive directors on the board of Railco as a public sector company. So basically, I've already put a plan here. Okay, the next thing, okay, my structure of my plan. And let's say you have actually finished doing all this for other questions as well. All right, let's see what I've put here. Okay, with all different colors, for perhaps you can actually refer to this particular exhibits. Okay, they have 5 questions. Okay, so basically this is what you want to do. Okay, the one that you have here from the first part here, this one is actually to demonstrate to you what we have actually covered inside our exam technique just now. That's why you have like, I'm labeling all these tasks. This is question verb, things like that. But as I go on, as I go through this particular question, okay, do you notice that I'm just circling, and I did not put, this is role, this is what, okay? Because why? I've already understood that, okay, this is my role. I'm telling myself, silently that is my role. I'm an assistant auditor now. So these are the information that is important for me. Okay, I'm actually circling it, and then this is the requirement, and basically, okay, as I actually read through, right? So did they actually mention which exhibits? Okay, as you go through the exhibits, you will know which one is for which, right? So follow through together with the rest, right? You do that. Okay, now I start labeling here, and I start to put some information, because why? Perhaps there are some technical terms that I need to know, and I need to actually put it down first, what they are, so that later when I find information in the exhibits, I will be able to actually explain what talent management is. Okay. Remember yesterday, I don't know whether it's yesterday, okay, I think yes, starting from day 1 until yesterday, that you actually have identified the topics, okay, the syllabus area that are being covered by each and every of those particular questions. Okay, why is it important? Okay, let's say here, I've already circled the talent management. Okay, I know that this talent management is actually under the substitute evaluation of and that strategic change. All right, implementing the strategic change. All right, so I know that it's there, and talent management. Once I know talent management, right, I put down here, okay, what talent management means. I need this guide so that I'll be able to actually explain after that. Okay, so I start putting down my technical knowledge, because technical knowledge will actually help me to answer this question. If I don't know what talent management is all about, then I wouldn't know how to answer this particular question. Okay, so same thing that you have to do, basically. Okay, so here is actually just an example of the business case, because this particular question requires you to do a write-up on the business case, and then after that producing a PID. So as you read through, okay, you know that this is an example of a PID. So why I put here is that this is just to show you an example, but for you, you need to actually spell out, okay, what a PID looks like. So basically, okay, you must have all this. And when you look at the exhibits, similarly to the rest of the question, all right, the rest of the exhibits, what you do is, okay, as you go through, okay, you know that, okay, you already know requirement number 1, basically what it is there, what they're asking you to do, requirement number 2, requirement number 3, 4, and 5. Okay, so as you read this particular exhibits, you find that this particular exhibit relates a lot towards this particular question. Excuse me. Question 1A and then 1B. Okay, so put it down. Put it down. If it helps you, you just put it down. Okay, I'm going to use this for 1A and 1B. These are the things that I may want to actually put inside later. All right. So similarly to the rest, okay, once you have gone through it, okay, put the questions that are related to it. All right. So for example, here, as I read through, I will have my, I will have my conclusion at every paragraph that I have. Okay, I should be having this. Same goes to the rest. That's what you should actually be doing. This is just an example, all right? So basically, you have this exhibits. Oh my God, this exhibit is what? It's about figures, things like that. So you need to read it carefully, all right? Because why? As you read through just now, exhibit 1 and 2, it might be related to this. And before you move on, just now I forgot to tell you, after you have done with your exhibit number 1, what you should do is go back to the requirements again, if you can't remember what it is after your first reading, so go back. All right, okay, go through back again. Okay, what is it that you're supposed to be looking for? Okay, whether okay you because while reading once perhaps you can remember okay what you need for all this. Then you go back to your exhibit number 2. Then you see whether these are related to which particular question just now. Similarly, before you move to this particular exhibit number 3, go back to the question requirement. Okay, just now where you actually find something that is actually related to passenger survey results. Okay, so if you know which requirements, you straight away put here, okay, to do that, I will actually use this. And same goes to the rest. All right, so basically that's how you actually apply your exam technique just now. You see, as I do this, if you notice that I am actually having lines at every of this particular paragraph. Why do I do that? Okay, why do I put I break it? So that psychologically, okay, you will see that there's not much to read. All right, because if you don't have that, it's overwhelming. Okay, so you look pieces by pieces. Okay, so basically I'm supposed to have my conclusion for this paragraph here. Then I have another one here like this, like what I have here. Okay, after going through this, okay, is evidence for failure of fiduciary duties. Because why I realized that one of the questions just now are talking about failing the fiduciary duties. So here is talking about failing the fiduciary duties. Then when I move on, okay, I find that this paragraph talks about ineffective internal control. So in one of the requirements just now, I did see things that are related to ineffective internal control. So I may want to use that as well. And here I found that there are evidence of failure of fiduciary duties. So that's how actually I will relate my question requirements, okay, with the exhibits. Okay, so same thing here. Moving on, and same goes here. So I need to actually relate it back. Okay, so if you notice that they are planning to hire a CEO, right? So you have candidates. Basically, this is what you will have in your exhibits. So what's best to do when you have something like that is to do some analysis like this to help you in answering those kind of questions where you need to do comparison, okay, in terms of who they are. Definitely you're not going to have all this nicely, okay, type analysis. So you just do it roughly, okay, the kind of analysis, but it's good actually if you are able to have that inside your plan. Okay, this is a simple analysis, and you may want to have this most likely that as your appendices, all right, for your question requirements. So this is basically what you can do if you want to evaluate 2 candidates. You can do this. You can do tabular, all right. So next will be, okay, this is the example that I'm just showing you, right? Okay, next will be the examiner's report. What you have at the back here is just like, they are going through question by question. Okay, I will just pick up the important points here, because if they're talking on all the specific ones, it's quite difficult for us to relate it to, because we don't have the question with us. Unless we have the question with us, then it would be easier for us to understand further what they mean. But I've already pick up certain points where you can actually learn from it. Okay, have a look at those that I think I've already sent this to those who are already in the WhatsApp group. Okay, Okay, something, excuse me. This is something that is actually important. I forgot to highlight this. Okay, something that is very important. Okay, and then definitely okay, what is it that we have here? And okay, what is it that the examiner is trying to tell us about this? Okay, it is good that when you want to actually study your SBL and you want to start answering your exam questions, it's good for you to actually go through the examiner's report. All right, because it's actually giving you some insights on their expectations, so that when you practice, you must make sure that you do the do's and you don't do the don'ts. All right, so because in the examiner's report, there's the do's and the don'ts. So it's good for you to read this particular reports, okay? Not just for SBL, but for your other papers as well. So since SBL started in September 2018, so you'll have like three examiners report. Have a look at it. In fact, in the ACCA global website, okay, they have actually summarized, okay, the lesson learned from September 2018 and then on the December 2018. So basically under this particular examiner's report, okay, this is what they share on the strengths and weaknesses of the candidate's performance. And what they are trying to actually give you is to give you some constructive advice, and because you'll be sitting for the exam, so they wouldn't want you to make the same mistake like these particular candidates have made, right? So two things for the format under the general comments. Okay, for the element of technical contents, remember these markers or examiners are actually emphasizing on the need to be applied to the case material. Okay, if you notice that I always say the word contextual, say this is what it meant, right? So you are not supposed to be pouring out whatever that you know about the subject matter, all right? Because it doesn't give you marks. So you need to actually apply it in the context of the case. And same goes to your professional marks. So they're telling you that when they award marks for the professional skills marks, okay, the markers are actually looking into the professional marks, professional skills that are being tested. If it's skepticism, so they will actually look into whether you have elements of skepticism or not. So then you'll be given marks accordingly. But remember, they also will look for general professionalism that candidates are demonstrating. What does this mean? In addition to those particular professional skills is your flow of thoughts that I was talking about. That means the way that you put your sentence, what should be written first, what should be written next, okay? So it's your flow of thoughts. And how clear that you actually write your answer. That plays an important role as well. You wouldn't want the markers to answer and get confused on what you are trying to write there. Okay, be clear, be straightforward. Okay, don't dwell. Okay, so you need to actually be straightforward try to actually, if you are able to find succinct words, okay, that means one particular vocab that explains everything. But if you are asking me, if you, for me, that one is actually quite impossible for those whose mother tongue is not English. All right, so forget about it. Okay, but you still be able to actually write something. Make sure you use simple language. Don't try to use any bombastic language that you are not sure of the meaning. All right, so be careful with that. So let us look at what stronger candidates do. They integrated and used relevant case study exhibits throughout their answers. All right. At the same time, they are able to select an appropriate syllabus knowledge, that means the technical knowledge that I was talking about, to support and apply points they were making. So not just that they have the technical knowledge, but they are able to integrate it and apply it in the context of the case. And when applying in the context of the case, okay, they are actually using all the relevant case study exhibits. Basically, okay, that's what you are supposed to be doing. Okay, so they demonstrate professional skills through analysis and discussion that they have and how they structured and presented their answers. You see, this is what I meant by flow of thoughts just now. So what did the weaker student do? Use pre-learned knowledge as basis of their answers and did not integrate or apply the case material adequately. They do apply, but it's superficial. All right, you need to demonstrate that you are intensely applying the case. Okay, intensely applying whatever knowledge that you have in the context of the case. Okay, no, what they meant here by, okay, did not apply it adequately, okay, it's like you tend to be general, okay, moving when you apply into the context of the case, then after that you get carried away in writing it in general. All right, so you don't use much of it in the context of the case. So that's the danger. All right. So in order for you to write well, you need to actually practice and practice and practice. If you know how a good answer looks like, you should actually be following that particular technique of answering. If you think that you're able to do that, do it. Right? Straightforward. Start to actually relate it to the case from the beginning. All right? So that would actually help. You see? What else did the examiner mention? You need to spend sufficient time reading. That's why I say start with 40 minutes, and after that, maximum is actually one hour if possible. Try not to exceed 1 hour unless you can write very fast and your expression of ideas in writing is good. Then that's different. Okay, but if you still need to think and write, okay, that will be rather slow. So make sure that you practice a lot so that you can actually practice on how to express your idea in writing. To be good in that, you really need to read a lot. The more that you read on the business news and understand the business news, like I mentioned to you, the articles that you have, not necessarily just a business news, okay, any articles related to your technical knowledge, right? As you read through those particular article, you should actually be, analyzing what you read and try to relate it to the technical knowledge that you do actually have learned. Because why? When you read articles, okay, about companies applying certain strategies, then only you see how that technical knowledge is actually being applied in the context of the case. So it's crucial that you actually read a lot. Read, okay? Don't be lazy to read. Practicing only doesn't help. Why? Because it doesn't give you ideas. It just gives you the skills to answer, but it doesn't give you ideas. To get more ideas, you need to read. The more that you read, the more ideas you have, the more that you are able to express your ideas in writing. Okay? Any questions so far? Wow, it's full of questions. Okay, let me just go through one by one. So you're asking about challenging. Challenging, okay, once you start questioning, okay, indirectly you are trying to, okay, indirectly you'll be challenging. It means that, okay, let's say you are question, after you have question, okay, why is this supposed to be this way? Only if it's like this, all right, then it will be better. So you have the however and the what if, okay, to actually show that you are actually challenging that particular information. Okay, you're talking about what is K is, okay, what is LS that I have inside that particular exhibit just now. Sorry, inside that particular question. Okay. Hold on. Can I refer back to you on this particular short form that I was using, all right? Can you please make available the real code specimen PDF as well? I mean, the one that you use in the web with your annotations. All right, I think I've actually forwarded. If you are in the WhatsApp group, I forwarded it in the WhatsApp group. All right. Okay. I will actually be demonstrating again with you, okay, on this particular what skepticism skill is all about. Okay, if also in the WhatsApp group, I've already sent you the sample of the answer plan, and then down there, okay, actually I've already like have sentences on how it would reflect certain skills. Okay, if you are able, excuse me, if you are able to refer to that, I think you should be able to understand what skepticism skill is all about. Okay. But tomorrow, since we are actually doing, tomorrow there'll be no slides. I'll be actually referring to you December 2018. Okay, there I will also demonstrate to you on how you should actually be writing to reflect, okay, all those skills that you have and to reflect the question verbs that you have. Okay, so not to worry, hopefully, okay, you'll be able to actually be demonstrating skepticism skills after this. Okay, look back here. Okay, remember, spend sufficient time reading and assimilating the case study material before you even contemplating answering the question. All right, make sure you understand it well first. Make sure you don't misinterpret. read several times, okay, and read slowly so that you'll be able to actually digest and understand what that particular information is all about, right? So the 6 exhibits that you have actually will provide you the material directly underpins the applied points, okay, that the candidate should be making. So here it says include background information, okay, that's actually providing context, help decide how to structure your answer, definitely, okay. So highlight most important issues that the answer should actually be covering. So basically most of the students fail to make sufficient reference to the available or focus too much on one exhibits. Sometimes that you find, oh, the answer is here and you're just focusing only on that particular one exhibit. Please don't do that. All right. You're just, minimizing the chances of you to get more marks. So if you still remember, I will say that go throughout the exhibit, see how those particular exhibits are actually linked to one another, in which aspect that they are actually connected. All right. So in which aspect that they are relevant. So you need to actually identify that, okay, from the beginning, so that when you start writing, you know, okay, what to actually write. As I always mention to you, always have requirements at the back of your head, okay, as you read through your exhibits, so that you know how to pick up your points, and so that you will have active reading. What I mean by active reading is that you read once, you know the points already for which question. You wouldn't want to read many, many times and waste your time and still not able to actually identify, okay, what that particular point is for and for which particular requirements. Okay, so that's why you need to have requirement in mind every time that you write. I think this is what this examiner is trying to actually highlight to the candidate. Should always read exhibits with requirements of every question in mind. Why helps identify which question, okay, that will be drawing on the material in each of that particular exhibit. Sometimes, okay, to answer questions, let's say, for example, to answer question number 1, okay, you may need like information for exhibit number 1, number 3, number 6. So you need to know how to put it together. All right. So it's not being looked in isolation. So it doesn't mean that one exhibit for one requirement and another second exhibit is for question number 2, third exhibit is question number 3. No, it doesn't work that way. All right. So you need to actually identify which particular exhibit is relevant to which requirement. Sometimes one requirement requires you to have like information from all the exhibits. It can. All right. So here in the case, the examiner gives you an example of what happened in the previous exam, that they have one particular exhibit number 1, which is actually relevant for throughout the exam. That means basically, okay, it's relevant to all the questions. So generally, you see, they ask you to spend sufficient time planning. Sufficient means enough time to plan. Why do you need to actually have sufficient time to plan? To ensure that your answers are structured logically. That means this is your logical flow of thoughts. Okay. And then balance in terms of depth, okay, of discussion required with the breadth of points to be made. That means sufficient in terms of depth and the length with the points given. You have these particular points, and when you write it down, it has to be balanced in terms of the depthness. All right? Not too long and not too short, just just nice, okay, for the points that you are having. And it should actually be covering the most important points. That means you have addressed most important points here. Okay, if let's say they're talking about certain issues about, certain technical knowledge, make sure you are able to actually address it, okay, comprehensively in the context of that particular requirement. Okay, the don'ts, this is why I put the cross here, and this is what you should do, and this is the one that you shouldn't do. All right. Not padded out with superfluous waffle, as this just wastes time and scores no marks. What does that mean? Avoid unnecessary, ambiguous, questionable, and uncertain write-up. Okay, something that makes the examiner question you again and again and again. What is she trying to tell me? What is this write-up? It's all about. Okay, so if they ask that question while marking, that means this is what you are doing. All right. And then it says what? Avoiding unnecessary overlap. Repeating the same point. That means you're doing some duplication, as marks are not awarded twice. All right. But if let's say you have that points but reflected different things, okay, under different requirements, but you're talking about different things, okay, same particular point, but elaboration wise is actually totally different from how you use the points before, then that's fine. Okay. You know why that you have to do your answer plan from the beginning, that you have all the information that you want to have for your answer, try to put it down at the beginning of the exam, is because of this particular paragraph here. Okay, exhaustion in final hour. This is a 4-hour exam. All right. For those of you who had the experience of sitting for this exam, I think you know what I mean when it comes to exhaustion in the final hour. Sometimes towards the last hour, you are already exhausted, you are tired, okay, you are losing your stamina, and sometimes you can't even think anymore, okay, especially additional points that you want to write. So that's the reason why it's good to have the answer plan at the beginning, so that you put whatever points that you want to write, okay, and then at least, okay, you have that points, that plans there. So if let's say you are already exhausted, at least you can still write something down based on the points that you have taught earlier. Okay, at least you wouldn't lose marks. Okay, at least you wouldn't go blank. And the danger of not doing it is that, okay, you may go blank towards the end because you're too tired, you can't think of anything. All right, it is exhausted. All right, the 4-hour exam. Even the 3 hours and 15-minute exam for P3, the students actually are exhausted. What more to say that you are added with another extra 1 hour. So make sure while you are still fresh, okay, you are still able to think critically and analytically at the beginning of the exam. Make full use of that particular planning time to actually plan the answers for all your requirements, not just one requirement, for all your requirement. All right. So I've been saying this to my students over and over again, and I did mention this in the webinar in February. All right. The same thing again and again. Why? Because if students in Malaysia, students will be taking the exam from 3 p.m. until 7 p.m. Right? 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. is actually a nice time for students to have a rest and not nap. They never have a nap. They always sleep. All right? Nap is just a short, sleeping for a short time. But talking about student is not a nap. All right? It's sleeping. So imagine from 3 to 7 evening. Okay, that's not a nice time to actually sit for an exam. But what can we do? All right, because that's the time that is actually being given by the examiner. Sorry, by ACCA. So we just have to follow that particular time. So to overcome whatever challenges that you have, okay, planning time is actually crucial. And I was towards this last, okay, round before your exam, if let's say you have exam during odd hours, okay, like in here in Malaysia, okay, basically from 3 to 7, to me that is actually an hours where you should actually be having a rest because you have work throughout the morning, okay. So that's the time where you can't think anymore, you're so exhausted. But because that your exam is actually during that time, you really need to be awake. Train yourself to be awake between 3 to 7 and train yourself to actually practice between 3 to 7 in doing your work. Right? It is crucial. Okay, if you're from other countries, same goes to you as well. I don't know what time that you'll be sitting for exam, but basically, I would say you may be sitting at the time whereby, okay, it's not a conducive kind of timing, right? So you need to practice during that particular hour. To me, afternoon is not a nice time. I feel sleepy at times, okay? And then you wouldn't be able to actually think when you are sleepy, isn't it? You are tired. So you need to actually train yourself from now onwards, all right? Practice during the exam hour. Make sure you are able to actually live through that particular 4 hours, okay, from that particular for that particular exam time, okay. Okay, this is actually some of the comments that the examiner is actually giving. They want you to answer the requirement of the question in order. Follow the number of the requirement. All right. If let's say you are not able to think of the answer, it's okay. Provide a space. Okay. Leave it blank. You may want to return and answer that particular question later after you have answered other questions, but make sure it is actually in sequence. You have pages for that. Okay. Why it is necessary for you to actually answer in a sequence is that, remember, SBL approach is different compared to P1 and P3 because you only have one particular case study and the requirement or the task that you are having is actually a continuous task. Okay, it may be related from work task number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, and number 5. It has its own sequence there. So be careful. You wouldn't want to actually disrupt the stories that they have there. Okay, basically it's a story, what actually happened at the beginning, next and next and next. So there's a flow of a story that you wouldn't want to interrupt. And that's why I mentioned to you earlier that when you answer the question, okay, and when you give your points, make sure your points are coherent with what you have already given, points that you have already given for the earlier requirements. And why you need to read the requirements earlier? Because you want to know the boundaries of the area that you are supposed to be answering. You don't want to be answering something that will overlap with the requirement of another question. Okay, that's the reason why. So why do you think that candidates fail? Why do I put here as a sloppy answer? It's all because of what? you don't quite understand the requirement of the question. Okay, you face difficulty in understanding the requirement of the question. And to help you actually overcome this particular problem, okay, what you need to do is like, okay, go through all the requirements, okay, go through it slowly, try to actually explain it to yourself, what is actually required by that particular question. For my students, what I did actually from the beginning of the from the class, for those who are actually not able to understand the requirements well, so what I asked them and how I actually train them to actually understand it is, okay, read all the requirements. I want them to actually explain, okay, what does that particular requirement actually asking you to do. So they are supposed to be able to explain to me what the requirement wants. And for some of them are not able to articulate well in English. So what I do is that I ask them to actually translate it in Malay language first. Okay, tell me in Malay language, what is it that you think that this requirement wants you to do? So they have to explain. And when they explain what the requirements, okay, are demanding them to do, then I will tell them, okay, what you thought is actually correct. Okay, that's what they want. So once they start to build up the confidence, okay, in understanding that particular requirements, okay, they will actually be able to answer other questions as well. So take time to actually understand it. Sometimes when you read the first time, you thought that it's like that. And when you read the second time, then only you realize, oh my God, I'm not supposed to be answering it that way. This question one is to be this way. Okay, so that's why you keep on actually read the requirements, read and read and read the requirements. Okay, as you write, go back to requirements, see whether, oh, have I answered it well. Go to the next point and look at the requirements again. Or is my point written here also answer the question? So you need to go back and forth as you write. You have your requirements there. Okay, so it helps you to actually answer only the requirement of the question, and you answer all that is required by that particular question, and you wouldn't want to miss out. Why do I say that you wouldn't want to miss out? There's a tendency that in one particular requirement, you have many action verbs. The action verbs here is the activities that you have to undertake, okay, in answering that particular question. So the action that you have to take. So make sure that you fulfill all those particular requirements, the action verbs, like the one that you had just now that I showed you. You got identify, then explain. After you are supposed to discuss. So make sure when you answer the question, you have all that elements inside your answer. Only then you consider as answering that particular question. Okay. So what are sloppy answer? Lengthy question, lengthy answer, over elaborated answers, okay, and then fail to articulate relevant points required by the question. Shows that you may have misinterpreted the question requirements. All right. So this is what actually sloppy answers are. I call that as sloppy answers. All right. Thinking, you still remember that when I asked you to actually, discuss, okay, when you do your discussion, if you have a group that can actually, okay, discuss, so for those in the WhatsApp group, I'll be posting something so that we can actually discuss together. All right. Why you need to discuss? Because it's actually to develop this critical and analytical thinking. Sometimes, okay, when you don't discuss, you think that the way that you think is correct, but someone else may be thinking along different line, which also is correct. So then you should actually say, oh, I can also look at it from a different perspective. and it's still correct. And oh, he's thinking along a different line as well, which is different for another person. So you actually are developing your critical and analytical thinking. Okay, that is crucial for SBL. Don't study alone. Okay, for SBL, if possible, don't study alone. Let's say if you don't have anyone for you to, you don't have a study partner, all right? Perhaps what you can do is, okay, if you read articles, try to discuss it with your office mates. Even if that your office mate is actually not taking ACCA, right? Not taking SBL, but you need someone, okay, for the discussion. So just talk about whatever articles that you have read. Okay, perhaps you might never know. That person may give you a good viewpoint. Okay, now we're talking about the technical marks. This now is all just about what? This now is about the exam performance. Okay, so now it's about technical marks. To gain your technical marks, okay, you're supposed to make points that address specific requirements, all right? Considering the scope of answer required and what question verbs used indicates should be provided. You see, the importance of understanding what the question verb is. So it's crucial. So apply to organization, its environment featured in the case. So in the case that they have is actually a clothing retail industry. If you have a PPP kit, okay, examination kit, refer to the mini mock that is on Chip Kit. It's a clothing company, all right? So there are 4 mini mocks inside there, all right? The BPP kit is good for you to attempt all. Okay, so especially on one particular question that is Linko. Why I actually recommend you to actually do that? I'm not spotting or anything because what we saw from the trend of the past exam from September, December, and March 2019, all right? So the nature of business actually are similar to the first 3 mini mocks. They are all the same, okay? The similar nature of business. So you are left with another one more that is Linko. Okay, I'm not saying that it would be similar to June 2019, but perhaps it's good to actually look at it. Okay. So another thing is that make sure you apply it in the context of the case, specific to decision or situation covered in the question. Okay, your points should be specific to the situation in the question. Okay, decision or situation in the question. No general answers. Okay, you must show the reader or marker why the point that they are making is significant in the circumstances described. So it means whatever that has been described inside the case. So you must make sure that, okay, why the points that you're making is actually significant in that particular context. Okay, what is it that you are not supposed to be doing? A demonstration of technical knowledge or explanation on theory will not score marks, okay, in the exam. Bear in mind, okay, that's what examiner has already emphasized, so take note of that. Okay, the problem that they have that has been actually highlighted here is that problem of using models if you don't know how to actually use the model correctly. Okay, because when you have models, it should be actually applied in the context of the case. So you wouldn't want to force your answer to fit the case. Sorry, to fit the framework. What it means here is that, let's say if you use pastel, all right, and you know that pastel has got, like, 6 components, and you want to make sure that all elements of pastel actually appear in your answer, and you try to fit whatever information in the exhibits to actually reflect that they have all the 6. Not necessarily. All right, sometimes you only have PES, you don't have TEL. All right, so make sure you are not forcing your answer to fit the framework, but the framework should actually fit the answer. If you only have political economy and social, then that's the only thing that you should be writing on. All right, and if you think that you can actually combine it with others, when you talk about, okay, external environment, okay, if you are able to actually relate it, not real, I mean integrate it with other external environment models, if it helps, why not? Not necessarily that you have to actually use one model only. All right, model is just to frame your answer. It's not actually for you to fit your answer to that particular model, because sometimes the elements are not there, so forget about it, right? So what examiner says is that candidates must appreciate that models and frameworks are never going to exactly fit the answer in an SBL task, but they provide a good basis for generating relevant ideas and developing answer into a suitable and easy to follow and mark structure, right? So if you can think of any model, but at least you know what are the headings that you should actually be putting for your points, that is actually quite all right. Okay, so don't have to worry so much. Repeated case material verbatim, this is what I meant by cut and paste or copy paste, right? It would not secure you any marks. That means whatever that the sentences that you have in the case, you use exactly that sentence inside your answer, you wouldn't get marks. All right, so basically 2 technical marks are often available for well-developed points. Okay, to have that particular well-developed points, okay, this is basically the what you should actually have. And I summarize it into what, how, and why question that you should actually be answering. Okay. Professional skill marks. Some students don't pay attention to actually the format, okay, and that's the reason why they don't actually score for the professional marks. So make sure you have, like it says there, attempt to present their answers in appropriate format, tone, and style as requested in each requirement. So if you actually fulfill this, okay, you'll be able to gain your professional marks. Okay. And the focus here is that, okay, when you are giving your answer, make sure your answer is actually short, focused sentences with paragraphs of 3 to 4 sentences only. You see, so as you write, don't write too much. Okay, you over elaborated on the points. Go straight to the points. At most that you write is 3 to 4 sentences, right? And make sure it's focused, right? Don't beat around the bush. So here it says that, okay, you need to have not just a clear heading, but your sentences must be straight to the point with paragraphs 3 to 4 sentences. Okay, so basically that's what professional marks is all about. Again, how candidates can actually get more marks. So you need to explain points in ways that will enhance the understanding of the target audience, address clearly what were the intended recipients as most interested in, and which may be specified in the case requirements of the exhibits. All right. So basically, from all this, you'll find that, okay, this is some of the conclusions that actually I have made from going through this particular requirements. From going through this particular exam report, okay, examiner's report. So spending too much time, okay, what happened is that they comment on each and every question is that students spend a lot of time in answering question number 1. Most of them get high marks, but at the end, they are not able to answer question number 5. Okay, so they get little marks there, and then they try to fit answer to model use, which result in disaster. Answer too long, also disaster. Lack integration, less marks. Do not know the boundaries of answer given, overlapping, and no marks. What it means is that, okay, this is why you have to answer in sequence, because that particular sequence is actually the flow of the story inside that particular case. And you must know that, okay, even though they are asking about the same thing, you must know the boundaries. What points that I will use to answer question 1A? What points that I will use to actually continue with that same subject matter or technical knowledge to answer B? They might be, addressing the same technical knowledge, but they are requiring you to do different things for that particular technical knowledge. So you need to know the boundaries between both of these. Okay, so that's the reason why it's actually very important for you to answer in sequence. Copy paste case materials, definitely there's no marks. Okay, so you are asked to actually look at marks as your guide, okay, to identify a proportionate length of write-up, and then as a guide for time management. Okay, so basically that's the advice by the examiner. And from there, for this particular next question, okay, the examiner highlighted that some students use tabular format to answer certain questions. This is something related with calculations, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, that was mentioning, okay, financial management knowledge. Okay, they did mention that those who actually use your, prior knowledge to help you answer the question will actually score more marks. Okay, so some of them actually use a tabular form to actually make sure that, okay, all the points are there. So it's actually accepted. Okay, especially when we have limited answering time. Okay. So this is actually the conclusion for this particular part. Okay, which have been mentioned earlier. Okay, I think you can actually read further on this. These are things that have been mentioned earlier in that particular general exam comment. All right, so basically that's what's happening in this question number 2A. Did not use model in context, no marks. Repetition, no marks. All right. And question number 2B, Students misinterpret the question requirements. So most of them is a disaster, no marks. Answers not articulated well using model, okay, lesser marks, okay. And some students answering what they know. It's not answering the requirement of the question. So that's the danger. Be careful. That's why you need to understand the question requirement well. Okay, question 3 is found that most students have giving the markers general answers, repetition, and using model not in the context. So that's why quite a number of them are not able to actually answer the question. But however, there are good students, okay, good candidates that are able to actually get good marks for this, right? Because why? They did not do this. Okay. Same issues here. Question 4, all right, those students who actually integrate with the knowledge brought forward actually can do excellently in this particular question and they get high marks. Okay, so here we can actually, you know, see that last questions, okay, I think the analysis is very much related to FM. So if you're checking AFM and you're able to integrate in your answers, and those of you who have already completed your option papers, all right. So if you think that any knowledge that you have already, gained and able to help you to answer this particular question, by all means, you are welcome to integrate it. Okay, your answer becomes richer. Okay, not just that your answer are become richer and you will actually gain more marks. So the comment here for the question number 5, that students do not have strong technical knowledge. So it's important for you to have a strong technical knowledge and the ability to have integrated thinking. All right. Integrated is the same like I covered the first day as synthesizing. All right. It's the same thing. And then it seems that those, even if you have a strong technical knowledge, if you are not able to apply it in the context of the case, then it's useless. Because question 5 was considered as a disaster, I would say, because most students lost the stamina in answering this question. That's why I say, if you have done your answer plan earlier, you would have been able to actually answer this particular question. Okay, so basically those are the lessons learned, okay, from March 2019, and hopefully you don't repeat the mistakes that has been done by candidates previously. And for those of you who have done your exam previously, all right, and you fail, okay, this is actually the comment by the examiner. So make sure that, okay, make sure that you don't repeat the same mistakes. March examiners report, I've also actually forwarded in the WhatsApp group. All right. And then the one that you have from this particular webinar that has actually is actually basically, I would say, not annotated. The one that I sent just now was actually annotated. Okay. What does it mean by copy paste material? That means you picking up exactly the same sentence and you use that exactly same sentence from the exhibits for your answer. Please don't do that. You need to actually use your own sentences, your words. All right. Okay, basically you are almost towards an end of our webinar tonight. Okay, hopefully to see you all again tomorrow night. So good night. So enjoy your day. Tomorrow, have a pleasant day ahead. Tomorrow, prepare yourself for the questions. All right.